Very excited to talk to our next guest, former U.S. Senator from the state of Georgia and part of the Greater Georgia Group. She is Kelly Loeffler, joining us here on The Morning Extra. Good morning, Kelly, and welcome. Thank you for being here.
Good Thursday morning, Mark. Great to be with y'all.
All right. Excited for the Red Belt Blitz. Greater Georgia Group has kicked off your Red Belt Blitz throughout several counties here in Georgia. You made the announcement yesterday. I'll open the floor for you to tell everybody what the goal is and what the purpose of the Red Belt Blitz is, and the floor is yours, ma'am.
Great. Well, first of all, Greater Georgia is an organization that I founded after the January 5th runoff and saw what the left was doing in our elections. And now we see what they're doing in our country. And I work every day. I'm the head volunteer. We're a conservative voter mobilization organization. As we all know, the left has largely had a monopoly on voter registration, voter mobilization. And I looked at that as a candidate and said, you know what? I'm a business person and a problem solver. We got to fix this problem. So part of what we've been doing at Greater Georgia is registering conservatives, mobilizing folks, growing our tent. Because what happens typically after an election is we take the tent down and say, okay, see you in 2 years. Very transactional. And we have got to make sure that we not only keep the tent up, but we grow it and invite everyone in. The Red Belt Blitz is really a 5-county focus. So it's some of the fastest growing counties in Georgia. It's 5 North Atlanta metro counties. Hall, Cherokee, Forsyth, and Bartow and Floyd. And we're going to be up there. That comprises about 10% of the conservative vote across Georgia. We're going to be targeting unregistered voters, disengaged voters, and disenfranchised voters. And that's about 100,000 potential new voters. And the margins of victory in this state are well below 100,000 votes. So we have a great chance to make a difference in these counties. So that's how we're mobilizing. And look, elections have consequences. We see it right now. You can't imagine a greater consequence than the sacrifice that was made for 20 years in Afghanistan and ending that with the loss of 13 of our bravest men and women. And, you know, we've got to make sure that we're holding these people accountable at the ballot box.
I think you're right, Kelly. Tug Cower here. I want to ask you one thing about the Blitz, too, in the 5 counties, because I think conservatives do a pretty bad job of reaching out to conservative minorities. And I know that there are so many minority voters who are conservatives, but they either don't feel welcome or they have been told that the conservative party doesn't want them there, which is absurd. How do we reach out to minorities that belong in a conservative voter movement like this?
Well, Todd, you're exactly right. And that's really one of the core tenets of Greater Georgia, defending election integrity, registering voters, and making sure that we reach out to minority voters, underrepresented voters. And I've been holding roundtables with the Black community, the Hispanic community, women, and too many of them have said, I've never met an elected official. I've never been reached out to, but I get texts and emails and mail from the left all the time. And so I'm here to say that we need every one of their voices because we share the same values: family, faith, love of this country, fighting for the American dream. You know, so many people understand that the American dream is still possible, even though the left says it's over. And they're trying to rob us of that through policies that rob us of our dignity and our ability to work and our opportunities to succeed and keep the government out of our lives and our families' lives. And that's really what we're fighting for here. And that applies across religions and race and everything, where the left tries to divide us along those lines.
She is Kelly Loeffler of Greater Georgia, joining us here on The Morning Extra. Download the Extra 106.3 app. So many questions running through my mind right now, but let's talk about redistricting as that process is going through, and the counties that you're looking at will be part of that in the 6th and 7th district, 2 very vulnerable districts for Democrats that Republicans want to take back. How much of that sort of plays into the strategy here for the Red Belt Blitz, if at all?
Well, the General Assembly will be meeting, it sounds like, toward the end of this year to draw those maps based on the newly released census data. And what we saw in that census data is that because these are some of the fastest growing counties, they're some of the most important because they have the power to influence the whole state. So I know that's going to be a thoughtful, important process, but the most important thing, the message that we are getting out to every single voter is that you have to show up and vote. Because on January 5th, we had 339,000 Republicans stay home that had voted in November. Now, that would have picked up 2 Senate seats, and the direction of the country could be very, very different today. And so your voice is important no matter what district you live in, where these lines change and how they're drawn. Don't be discouraged. Use your voice, because the left wants to discourage us. They complain about Senate Bill 202 as suppression, when in fact, virtually the vast majority of Georgians agreed that voter integrity and the need for more safeguards was more important than anything else coming out of this election. And so I applaud the Senate and House for advancing the Election Integrity Act that now the DOJ is suing us over. We filed an amicus brief in that. Because we have to have voter ID. We need to have drop boxes that are monitored through video surveillance so that everyone trusts this process and that they don't stay home again because they don't trust it. And that's the problem. When in 2020 we saw far too many unprecedented changes to our elections, and it really just cost us the faith and confidence of our voters.
Kelly Loeffler again joining us here on the Morning Extra. Download the Xtra 106.3 app. You mentioned the voters who didn't show up in the runoff, and it is disconcerting. And demographically, a lot of them came from North Georgia, in that area where they didn't show up. And so I know that's not the focus of Countywise where the Red Belt Blitz is going right now, but those disenfranchised folks, if they decide not to show up for Brian Kemp in 2022 or any of the other races, the Senate race here, that against Raphael Warnock, I mean, again, that could sway things in the other direction. How do you prove to those people who still believe that the election was fraudulent or there were irregularities that their voting is secure beyond SB 202? Do you have to campaign with them? Do you have to re-enfranchise them to come back out? I mean, how much of a focus will this be?
Well, great question. And our Red Belt Blitz borders on that area. And that's why we're going to be in person, at doors, doing events, volunteer recruitment, mobilizing. And certainly we did that on our campaign. We touched the average person in those areas about 7 to 9 times. But when they don't believe in the process, you can understand why they'd be frustrated and not feel like their vote counts. And in fact, you even have a board member of Stacey Abrams' voter mobilization, the liberal group Fair Fight, saying that all the voter fraud occurs in absentee ballots. And so that's why it's important to say we now have ID requirements with absentee ballots. So some of this is educating people what's in Senate 202, but it's also us being out, being poll watchers, poll workers, and being involved in the process. And that's why I'm encouraging, your folks, everyone listening, go to greatergeorgia.com, sign up, get our newsletter, and volunteer, because if each one of us does our part, we will not only defend those seats and make sure that we keep this a red state, but we'll send a strong signal to the rest of the country, to New York and California, that you don't need to send your money and your campaign contributions here anymore. We're defending the line here as a red state.
Kelly, let's talk about your future. I mean, where does that lie? If you decide to vote or if you decide to run, when will you make that announcement? And if you're not going to, then who will you support?
Well, look, my entire focus right now is on Greater Georgia, because I saw firsthand, if we don't have this effort to build confidence in our elections, to hold our officials accountable for investigating what went wrong, and if we also don't grow the tent and register more voters, our margins of victories are too narrow to take for granted. So I've got to, defend that, and that's my major focus. And I'll continue to watch. I know so many of the candidates. I've been meeting with candidates in all offices. We're a candidate neutral organization. We support conservatives, whether they're voters or candidates. And, I'm going to keep my focus on this for now.
Again, Kelly Loeffler of Greater Georgia joining us. That said, the landscape across the Republican Party at this point, with or without you technically in a race, it's very, very crowded. I mean, obviously, again, for the Senate race already, Herschel Walker ends up in the campaign. Clearly, Brian Kemp will have his hands full in the gubernatorial election. Where is the Republican Party right now? And I know the events in Afghanistan sort of have at least, brought the Republican Party together on one singular issue, that the whole thing was botched. And so they try to build momentum off that. But do you feel like the Republican Party is back in good standing again as far as, a position of strength going forward?
Well, I think what's going on right now, whether you look at what's happening in Afghanistan, the sacrifice that our veterans made, and thank y'all. I know y'all are veterans, and thank you for your service. And you look at open borders, what kids are learning in school. You have teachers posting the Antifa flags and BLM flags, and you have kids coming out of school that can't read, but you have teachers trying to radicalize them. Our party, our movement, the conservative movement, stands against that because we want freedom, opportunity, equality for everyone. And so we are in a strong place right now. We cannot take that for granted, though. We have to double down now and work. And that's why I'm doing it outside of an election year, because we can never take a year off. And that has to be our new mentality, is we can organize and we can make sure that we mobilize well in advance of an election, so we have the relationships with the communities that need us to support their values, like the Hispanic community, women who care about their families. And that's what we're focused on.
She is Kelly Loeffler of Greater Georgia. Again, the Red Belt Blitz. I've seen some of the ads. Continue to look out for them. Is there a place that they can go online or whatever to get more information about the Red Belt Blitz and Greater Georgia?
Yeah, if you just go online to greatergeorgia.com, you can get more information. I've got newsletters. We put out a newsletter a couple times a month. You can read about where we've been. I was just up in Greene County a couple nights ago. We do trainings across the state to make sure our volunteers are ready to go, and we're registering voters. So if you want to be part of it, be part of leading this in your community, each one of us has to use our voice here. It's not just talking. We can complain all we want. It won't change things. We can only change things through action. So thank you so much. I am excited to have more of your listeners get involved.
Absolutely. Listen, for what it's worth, Kelly, I think what you're doing is fantastic. Again, it's high time that as conservatives, we actually get more involved in the game. We've always just assumed it's what we do, but in reality, the numbers have bore out that we've sort of rested on our laurels and gotten a little lazy. And I think the campaign and the idea of it, and again, getting everybody out registered to vote, Republican or Democrat, is super important to the health of our democracy. But this is an effort, I think, that is long overdue in recent years, and certainly thank you for spearheading it.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Have a blessed day.
You too. Former U.S. Senator Kelly Loeffler.